Picture this, August 10, 2019, Metropolitan Correctional Center, New York City. It's a Saturday morning, around 6:30 a.m., inside one of the most secure federal detention facilities in America. In a special housing unit designed for high-profile inmates, a guard makes his routine rounds. He approaches cell number 220. Inside is Jeffrey Epstein, a 66-year-old financier and convicted sex offender. Epstein has been in custody for just over a month, arrested on federal charges of sex trafficking minors. He's awaiting trial. If convicted, he faces decades in prison. The guard looks through the small window in the cell door. He sees Epstein. He's on the floor, in a kneeling position, leaning forward. There's something around his neck, an orange bedsheet tied to the top of the bunk bed. The guard realizes immediately. Epstein is not moving. He's not breathing. He's dead. Within minutes, alarms sound. Guards rush in. They cut the bedsheet. They attempt CPR. Paramedics arrive. They transport Epstein to New York Downtown Hospital. At 7:36 a.m., Jeffrey Epstein is pronounced dead. The official cause of death, suicide by hanging. But almost immediately, questions arise. How did this happen? Epstein was supposed to be on suicide watch. He was one of the most high-profile inmates in federal custody. He had information that could implicate some of the most powerful people in the world. Politicians, billionaires, royalty. And now he's dead, conveniently dead. Before he could testify, before he could name names. Within hours, the phrase spreads across the internet, becoming one of the most famous memes in modern history. Epstein didn't kill himself. This is the story of Jeffrey Epstein's death. What happened on August 10, 2019? The suspicious circumstances, the failures of the prison system, the autopsy that raised more questions than answers, the conspiracy theories, and why millions of people believe Jeffrey Epstein was murdered. Let me take you through the events of that morning, the investigation that followed, and the mystery that refuses to die. To understand why Epstein's death is so controversial, you need to understand who Jeffrey Epstein was and what he was accused of. Jeffrey Edward Epstein was born on January 20, 1953, in Brooklyn, New York. He grew up in a middle-class Jewish family. He was intelligent, charismatic, and ambitious. In the 1970s, he taught calculus and physics at the Dalton School, an elite private school in Manhattan. But teaching didn't pay enough. Epstein wanted wealth, power, access. In 1976, Epstein left teaching and entered the world of finance. He worked at Bear Stearns, a major Wall Street investment bank. But in 1981, he was fired under mysterious circumstances, reportedly for violations of securities laws. Undeterred, Epstein started his own financial consulting firm in 1982. He claimed to only work with billionaires, managing their money and helping them with financial strategies. But how Epstein actually made his fortune remains a mystery. He had no formal qualifications, no clear track record, yet by the 1990s, he was incredibly wealthy. His first major client was Leslie Wexner, the billionaire founder of Lab Brands, which owns Victoria's Secret and Bath & Body Works. Wexner gave Epstein enormous power, including power of attorney over his finances. Epstein managed Wexner's money, bought properties for him, and essentially had complete control over Wexner's financial life. But Epstein's wealth and connections came with a dark secret. He was a sexual predator, and he was running a systematic operation to sexually abuse underage girls. Starting in the 1990s, Epstein began recruiting teenage girls, some as young as 14, to his mansions in New York, Palm Beach, and his private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. The girls were told they'd be giving him massages. They were paid a few $100s, but the massages quickly turned into sexual abuse. Epstein didn't work alone. His longtime companion, Ghislaine Maxwell, helped recruit the girls. She befriended them, gained their trust, and then delivered them to Epstein. It was a systematic, organized operation of abuse that went on for years. Epstein also used his wealth and connections to surround himself with powerful people. He flew celebrities, politicians, and business leaders on his private jet nicknamed the Lolita Express. He hosted them at his private island known as Pedophile Island or Orgy Island. Flight logs and visitor records show that Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Prince Andrew, Bill Gates, and many others had connections to Epstein. Some flew on his plane, some visited his properties. The extent of their knowledge of or involvement in his crimes is unclear, but the associations are deeply troubling. In 2005, the parents of a 14-year-old girl reported to police that Epstein had molested their daughter. An investigation began. Police in Palm Beach, Florida, found dozens of victims. The evidence was overwhelming. Epstein should have faced federal charges for sex trafficking minors, which could have resulted in life in prison. But in 2008, something extraordinary happened. Alexander Acosta, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, made a secret deal with Epstein's lawyers. Instead of federal charges, Epstein pleaded guilty to 2 state charges of soliciting prostitution. He was sentenced to just 18 months in county jail. And it gets worse. Epstein was allowed work release, meaning he spent 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, outside of jail at his office. He served only 13 months before being released. The deal was illegal. Federal law requires that victims be informed of plea agreements. Epstein's victims were never told. The deal was kept secret, and Epstein walked free. For the next decade, Epstein lived openly. He continued to socialize with the rich and powerful. The abuse continued, though perhaps more carefully. But in 2019, everything changed. On July 6, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was arrested at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey. As he returned from Paris on his private jet, federal prosecutors in New York charged him with sex trafficking of minors and conspiracy to commit sex trafficking. This time there would be no sweetheart deal. The charges were serious. The evidence was damning. Prosecutors had testimonies from dozens of victims. They had flight logs, photos, documents. Epstein was facing the rest of his life in prison. He was denied bail. The judge ruled he was a flight risk and a danger to the community. Epstein was sent to the Metropolitan Correctional Center, a federal detention facility in Lower Manhattan, to await trial. Inside MCC, Epstein was placed in the Special Housing Unit, a section for high-profile or at-risk inmates. He was watched closely, or at least he was supposed to be. On July 23, 2019, just over 2 weeks after his arrest, Epstein was found unconscious in his cell with marks on his neck. It appeared to be a suicide attempt, though some speculated it could have been an attack by another inmate, or a faked attempt to get transferred to a hospital. Epstein survived. He was placed on suicide watch, a special protocol where inmates are monitored constantly to prevent self-harm. But 6 days later, on July 29, he was taken off suicide watch. Why? It's unclear. Psychologists reportedly evaluated him and determined he was no longer at risk. Epstein was moved back to the Special Housing Unit. He was supposed to have a cellmate as an additional safeguard. He was supposed to be checked on by guards every 30 minutes. But on the night of August 9th, going into August 10th, multiple failures occurred. Epstein's cellmate was transferred out. He was left alone in his cell, violating the protocol that high-risk inmates should not be alone. The 2 guards assigned to monitor Epstein's unit didn't check on him. In fact, they later admitted they didn't check on any inmates for 8 hours. Instead, they sat at their desks, browsed the internet, and slept. The security cameras outside Epstein's cell malfunctioned. Video footage from that night is either missing, corrupted, or shows an empty hallway. Convenient. At some point during the night, Jeffrey Epstein tied an orange bedsheet to the top bunk of his bed and hung himself. Or at least, that's the official story. At 6:30 a.m. on August 10th, a guard found him. He was already dead. CPR was attempted. He was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. Jeffrey Epstein, the man who knew the secrets of some of the most powerful people in the world, was dead, and he would never testify. The moment news of Epstein's death broke, conspiracy theories exploded. Social media lit up. Within hours, Epstein didn't kill himself became a meme, a rallying cry, a statement of disbelief. Why? Because the circumstances were too suspicious, too convenient. Too many things went wrong at exactly the right time for Epstein to die. Here are the main reasons people doubt the official suicide narrative. Epstein had survived a previous suicide attempt just weeks earlier. After that, he should have been on constant watch. How was he taken off suicide watch so quickly? Epstein was supposed to have a cellmate, but his cellmate was transferred out the night before he died. Why? Who authorized it? Guards are supposed to check on inmates in the Special Housing Unit every 30 minutes, but the 2 guards on duty that night admitted they didn't check on anyone for 8 hours. They falsified logs to make it look like they had. Later, the guards were charged with conspiracy and falsifying records. They made a deal with prosecutors and avoided jail time, but the question remains, were they simply negligent, or were they paid to look the way? The cameras outside Epstein's cell either malfunctioned, or the footage was lost. In one of the most secure federal facilities in the country, housing one of the most high-profile inmates in decades, the cameras just happened to fail. The autopsy was conducted by New York City's chief medical examiner, Dr. Barbara Sampson. She ruled Epstein's death a suicide by hanging. But Dr. Michael Baden, a renowned forensic pathologist hired by Epstein's family to observe the autopsy, raised concerns. Baden noted that Epstein had multiple fractures in his neck, including a broken hyoid bone. A broken hyoid bone can occur in hangings, but it's more common in cases of strangulation or homicide. Baden suggested the injuries were more consistent with someone being strangled than with suicide by hanging. Dr. Sampson stood by her ruling, but the doubt was planted. Was Epstein murdered and the scene staged to look like suicide? Jeffrey Epstein had dirt on some of the most powerful people in the world: presidents, princes, CEOs. His black book contained over 1,000 names. Flight logs showed who visited his island. Photos showed who attended his parties. If Epstein went to trial, he might have named names to reduce his sentence. He might have implicated people in his sex trafficking operation, powerful people who wanted to keep their secrets buried. Did someone order a hit on Epstein to silence him? The theory is that Epstein was murdered by agents working for one or more powerful individuals who couldn't risk him talking. Suspects in this theory include Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Prince Andrew, or even intelligence agencies like the CIA or Mossad. There's no proof, but the motive is clear. Epstein dead meant secrets stayed buried. Some conspiracy theories suggest Epstein didn't die at all, that he faked his death with the help of powerful allies, and is now living under a new identity somewhere. Proponents of this theory point to inconsistencies in photos of Epstein's body being taken to the hospital. Some claim the body doesn't look like Epstein. Others suggest he was smuggled out of the facility. This theory is far-fetched and has no credible evidence, but it persists in certain corners of the internet. The official investigation into Epstein's death was conducted by the FBI and the Department of Justice's Office of the Inspector General. In June 2023, after years of investigation, the Inspector General released a report. The findings were damning, but not in the way conspiracy theorists hoped. The report confirmed that MCC staff failed to follow protocols. Guards didn't check on Epstein. His cellmate was improperly removed. Video surveillance failed, but the report found no evidence of foul play. It concluded that Epstein's death was a suicide enabled by institutional failures and negligence, not murder. The two guards on duty that night, Tova Noel and Michael Thomas, were charged with conspiracy and falsifying records. They admitted to sleeping and browsing the internet instead of doing their jobs. In 2021, they made a deal with prosecutors. Charges were dropped in exchange for community service and cooperation. Many saw this as a slap on the wrist. If Epstein was murdered, the guards would have been key players. Why weren't they punished more severely? Dr. Cyril Wecht, another prominent forensic pathologist, reviewed the evidence and agreed with Dr. Baden that the injuries were suspicious, but Dr. Sampson, the official medical examiner, maintained her ruling of suicide. The truth is, without video evidence or eyewitnesses, it's nearly impossible to definitively prove whether Epstein killed himself or was killed. So what really happened on August 10, 2019? There are three main possibilities. This is the official conclusion. Epstein was facing life in prison. He'd lost his wealth, his freedom, his reputation. He was a convicted sex offender, facing decades behind bars. Suicide is not uncommon among inmates in similar situations. The failures of the prison system, the lack of supervision, the broken cameras, the removed cellmate, all of these can be explained by incompetence, understaffing, and systemic neglect. MCC was notoriously poorly managed. Guards were overworked and underpaid. In this scenario, Epstein saw an opportunity and took it. He tied a bedsheet to his bunk and hanged himself. The failures of the system allowed it to happen, but it was still suicide. This is the theory many believe. Epstein had too much information on too many powerful people. Someone, or multiple someones, wanted him dead. A hit was ordered. Guards were paid off or threatened. Cameras were disabled. Epstein's cellmate was removed. And then in the middle of the night, someone entered his cell and strangled him. The scene was staged to look like suicide. The broken hyoid bone, the convenient failures, the timing all point to murder. Epstein didn't kill himself. He was silenced. A middle ground. Perhaps Epstein did intend to kill himself, but perhaps powerful people ensured the conditions were right for him to succeed. Guards were told to look the other way. Cameras were disabled. His cellmate was removed. In this scenario, Epstein killed himself, but he was allowed to, facilitated, encouraged, even because his death was convenient for too many people. The truth is, we may never know. Without video evidence, without credible witnesses, without a confession from anyone involved, the death of Jeffrey Epstein will remain a mystery. What we do know is that the system failed. Whether through incompetence or conspiracy, Jeffrey Epstein should not have died in federal custody. He should have faced trial. His victims deserve justice. The people he implicated deserve to be held accountable. Instead, Epstein is dead, and with him many secrets died too. After Epstein's death, the focus shifted to Ghislaine Maxwell, his longtime companion and alleged accomplice. Maxwell went into hiding after Epstein's arrest. For a year she evaded authorities. but in July 2020, the FBI found her at a secluded estate in New Hampshire. She was arrested and charged with sex trafficking minors and conspiracy. Maxwell's trial took place in late 2021. Victims testified about how she groomed them, gained their trust, and delivered them to Epstein. The evidence was overwhelming. In December 2021, Ghislaine Maxwell was found guilty on 5 of 6 counts. In June 2022, she was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. Many hoped Maxwell would name names, revealing who else was involved in Epstein's operation, but she hasn't. To this day, the full list of Epstein's associates and potential co-conspirators remains largely secret. Epstein's victims, many of whom are now adults, have been fighting for justice. Dozens have come forward, sharing their stories of abuse. Many have filed lawsuits against Epstein's estate. One of the most famous victims is Virginia Giuffre. She claims she was trafficked by Epstein and Maxwell and was forced to have sex with several powerful men, including Prince Andrew, the son of Queen Elizabeth II. Prince Andrew denied the allegations. He gave a disastrous interview with BBC in 2019, where he claimed he couldn't have been with Giuffre because he was at a Pizza Express in Woking that day. The interview was widely mocked. In 2022, Prince Andrew settled with Giuffre out of court, reportedly paying between $12 and $15 million. He admitted no wrongdoing but agreed to pay. His royal titles were stripped, and he was effectively exiled from public life. Jeffrey Epstein's death left many questions unanswered. Who else was involved in his sex trafficking operation? How many victims were there? How did he amass his wealth? Who were his powerful protectors? The phrase "Epstein didn't kill himself" has become a cultural phenomenon. It's more than a conspiracy theory. It's a statement of distrust in institutions, in the justice system, in the idea that powerful people face consequences. Whether Epstein killed himself or was killed, one thing is certain: the system failed, and because of that failure, we may never know the full truth. August 10, 2019, 6:30 a.m., Metropolitan Correctional Center, New York City. Jeffrey Epstein is found dead in his cell, an orange bedsheet around his neck, kneeling position, alone. Official cause: suicide by hanging, but guards didn't check on him for 8 hours. His cellmate was removed the night before. Cameras malfunctioned. Autopsy showed injuries consistent with strangulation. Epstein had information on the world's most powerful people, presidents, princes, billionaires. If he testified, he could have implicated them all. Now he's dead. Conveniently dead. Before he could talk. Suicide, murder, assisted suicide, we may never know. What we do know, Jeffrey Epstein didn't just die. The system allowed him to die. Whether through negligence or conspiracy, justice was denied. Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison, but the full truth remains buried. Jeffrey Epstein, January 20th, 1953, August 10th, 2019, pedophile, sex trafficker, and the man whose death sparked one of the biggest conspiracy theories in modern history. Epstein didn't kill himself, or did he?